Good morning, everybody. I'm Susan Hertzberg. I'm happy to be back at LSI this year. Update you on our progress in commercialization of BrainScope. First, give you a little bit of background on who we are and our device. We are the first and only FDA-cleared decision support tool for the comprehensive assessment of mild traumatic brain injuries, including brain bleeds and concussion. In terms of kind of a quick summary, we're revenue stage, disruptive neurotechnology platform. Today we're focused on brain bleeds and concussion, but we see other indications in degenerative disorders, stroke, et cetera. We're exceptionally well validated at this point, 32 peer-reviewed clinical studies, 23 clinical, over 90 clinical sites, highly experienced team, and a rapidly growing customer base, which I'm excited to tell you about. 89 granted patents, and 8 FDA clearances. So just to frame the problem, and so looking at some pre-COVID numbers, because as activities resume, we know that these numbers are coming back. 5 million head-injured patients sought care at America's emergency departments pre-COVID. 4 million of them received head CAT scans, non-contrast head CTs, and of those, 3.6 million were negative, 91%. Patients are coming in seeking answers. If we think about the tragic death of Bob Saget, which was all over the news recently, certainly you want the CT, you want the structural injury classifier to rule out the likelihood of a brain bleed. But the problem is the vast majority of those patients don't have bleeds. It's a very small percentage. The vast majority are often concussed. And all of the CTing in the world tells you absolutely nothing about that. As we started commercialization, what we see in the data reported back from our customers is that, in fact, the vast majority of these patients are concussed. So if we think about what's happening in the emergency rooms where these patients are seeking care today, what we know is that head CT is most often the tool of choice. That's going to rule out the brain bleed, really important. Tells you absolutely nothing about concussion. And on the concussion side, most EDs do not do an assessment. The tools are old, they're highly subjective. We see it in the sports world all the time. They don't take the time to do it. They basically say to the patient, if your symptoms worsen, come back or call your primary care physician. These patients aren't getting steered to appropriate care. So what does BrainScope do? Well, in a 2-minute EEG collection, using 2 separate FDA-cleared algorithms, we can provide results for both structural injury, brain bleed, and functional injury, concussion. It's a handheld, portable, Android-based unit that connects to a disposable single-patient, single-use headset, and the entire assessment takes under 15 minutes to run. If we think about what the tools are in the EDs today, what you can see in this slide is just how well we compare to standard of care tools for various assessments. Our performance characteristics are well above those of others, and the one we get compared to most frequently is actually D-dimer, which is to rule out the likelihood of a blood clot, and here we're ruling out the likelihood of a brain bleed. If you're going to introduce yourself in triage into an emergency room, you better be fast, simple, and intuitive. We can basically put a BrainScope device in somebody's hand who's never seen it before and have them run an assessment and get it done without any training at all, just based on the intuitiveness of the device. It can be used under the auspices of any physician, so it does not require a physician or nurse. It can be done by a med tech or other personnel, and again, simple, easy to use. The screen actually lights up red or green, so you know you have good connectivity and placement. So we make it pretty difficult to make a mistake with the device. We're an all-comer test, also really important, right? If you're going to come in, you don't want people going through a lot of mental exercises of, this patient's on blood thinners, therefore we can't use them, they've got to be this or that. So 18 to 85 years of age, within 72 hours of injury, Glasgow Coma Scale of 13 to 15, you are good to go with BrainScope. You can be drug or alcohol impaired, which is 30 to 50% of head incidents involve them. On blood thinners or other medications, your brain waves don't get altered by those chemicals, and so we're really, come on, if you meet those 3 basic criteria, you are a candidate for BrainScope. Our results are really simple to interpret. On the structural side, big green and red boxes for negative, and that patient does not likely have a brain bleed, and send them home. And then on the functional side, concussion, our FDA clearance is that we scale with level of severity, and so we're showing that on a graph so that it's easy to interpret the severity of a concussion. We also impact length of stay, and I'm going to share that in our clinical outcomes in just a moment, taking a lot of time out of these low mid-acuity patients who end up spending up to 6.5 hours in an emergency department, often waiting for a CT. We have a 3rd FDA-cleared algorithm specifically for concussion and concussion management. Think about the sports world and anyone that you want to serially look at over time. So the concussion index is really groundbreaking. It's the first of its kind, and it is a stable measure that can be reliably interpreted in concussion management. So how are we doing? We made the brilliant decision to commercialize this technology to America's emergency departments at the start of a pandemic. It was a challenge, to say the least, but we have made tremendous progress, and in fact, and as many of you know, in early adoption, you think you're looking for the needles in the haystack who will give you a shot. We've actually found just an overwhelming warm embrace of what we're doing and an understanding of the need, and we're getting through a lot faster than we thought. We conducted and completed 2 important pilots last year, and the first was with Inova Fairfax Hospital, a level 1 trauma center, and what they showed was a 60% reduction in their use of head CT when they use BrainScope in triage. Just an enormous benefit, and by the way, twice as good as what we had in our validation study, which was 30.8%. And in that same population, that 50% of the patients were actually concussed. They did a survey at the end, and it was off the charts in customer satisfaction. They loved the use of the technology. They loved getting the answers they actually need around concussion. At Coleman Regional Hospital, a level 3 trauma center, similar kinds of results. There, a 40% reduction in head CT, 54% of the patients turned out to be concussed, and there they actually were measuring length of stay, and they saw a 138-minute reduction. That is before optimizing workflows, so we know that there's more. Those lead to significant benefits. Overall value proposition, there's established reimbursement, there's opportunity cost benefit in getting these patients in and out, high patient satisfaction, increased throughput, and patient safety in the reduction of radiation to the brain. We have gotten into over 25 customer accounts in this past year, GPO contracts. We're rapidly expanding. We actually have a bit of a backlog as we wait for COVID to recede, and onboarding some specialty distributors. We have other indications, as I said. This is a summary of key messages, and where we are today is seeking new investment to more rapidly expand our commercial operations. All of the signal, all of the interest is there. We are out in the market, and we are getting new adoption. Thank you.